Hi there, me again. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Ferrania P30, a legendary Italian cinema film that is made by the company Ferrania, which has an interesting history that's been kind of rocky recently. So I was lucky enough to have one roll of this film with me during a trip through Colorado and Utah. And I also had the end of the roll with me during a trip to Chicago. So I've got a lot of different photos to show you guys with this one roll of P30 that I had. And I just kind of wanted to give you guys sort of a first impressions of this film and just kind of talk about the history of Ferrania and P30. So let's get started. So Ferrania has roots as a different company that got its start in 1882, but in 1920 it became Ferrania and they started making film emulsions. And once 1924 rolled around, Lights Camera started making the Leica camera, and 35mm really took off as a format, which gave Ferrania a big boost. So I would consider Ferrania's heyday to be from the 1930s all the way up until the 1970s, where it was making 35mm and 120 film formats, and they were kind of the go-to black and white film for a lot of Italian filmmakers out there, such as Federico Fellini and Roberto Rossellini. Also, Vittorio De Sica's film Two Women won an Academy Award in 1960, which really propelled the film that it was shot on, P30, into the limelight and made a lot of amateur photographers want to emulate that look in their own photography. In the 1980s through the 2000s, Ferrania was manufacturing a lot of film for a lot of other companies and brands, and it was doing really good until the digital revolution took over, and in 2010, Ferrania had to shut down. That didn't last very long, though, as Ferrania was revived by Film Ferrania, a new company that bought the old laboratory as well as a lot of the old manufacturing equipment and rehired some of the original technicians. Once Film Ferrania revived the company and got the factory going again, their first kind of endeavor was to try and get color film back on track because they were a big color film producer, but that became a little bit more complicated and that kind of fell through. And they set their sights back on P30 and reviving that legendary black and white film stock. So in 2017, the alpha version of P30 was introduced, and in December of 2019, the final version of P30 was released to the public. And just a couple years ago, Ferrania actually released P33, a slightly higher ISO black and white film stock, which was really a good sign for the company. But that didn't last very long, as in 2025, the Orwo owner bought Ferrania, and that seems good, but currently that's kind of causing some headaches and some delays in manufacturing, and I think just some general confusion in the film photography community, where you can see that the film is not in stock and it's listed as discontinued on places like B&H. But I think once Orwo kind of figures out manufacturing with Ferrania's old film stocks, I think it's going to be in a really good place, and I think we're going to see Ferrania blossom as a company. So that's the kind of short, brief history of Ferrania. Let's talk about the traits and specs of Ferrania P30. Son, you don't need to go to the Sahara. We got the Sahara at home. I got it. Time for a shot with the 90. So Ferrania P30 is an 80 ISO panchromatic black and white film that has a high silver content, which results in very high contrast and very fine grain. It's currently not available because of the kind of manufacturing transition with Orwo, but you can still find it some places for around $12 a roll, which is what it was selling for when it was in regular production. So I developed this roll of P30 with the Cinestill monobath, and I scanned all of the photos on my Nikon Coolscan 5. So something interesting I noticed when I was looking at the results from my roll of P30, it says it's panchromatic, but it kind of behaves a little bit more like an orthochromatic film because it renders reds really dark. And you can see that in shots like this one of the Chicago fire station that I took a picture of. All that red brick is super dark. So kind of behaves a little bit more like an orthochromatic film, which I think is interesting. If you've got a scene that's got really bright highlights and really dark shadows, you're going to have trouble kind of finding a middle ground. This is a good example here of my shot in the gift shop of Monument Valley. I metered right in between the highlights and the shadows. So yeah, when you find really contrasty scenes, just kind of be careful and maybe bracket your exposures when you're using this film. Other than that, though, I will say Ferrania P30 has a very, very punchy and unique look that I really, really like. And it is a little bit more expensive at $12 a roll, and that'll kind of keep me from shooting it regularly, but I think it is a film I will buy periodically when I have a specific use for it. So yeah, all in all, I think Ferrania P30 is a really unique film, and it's made by a really cool company that has a really interesting history. So I would say support them all you can if you can find the film. It's currently unavailable, which kind of sucks. But I think once Orwo figures things out, I think it'll be back on the market. And I think we'll be seeing a lot of other really interesting films from Ferrania as well. So yeah, go pick that roll up and give it a shot and let me know what you think. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.